Awesome, awesome, awesome. Let's see what we got. So we got a 20-inch yard machine, 125cc Briggs & Stratton. This one's a Craftsman 140cc, also Briggs & Stratton. Both missing gas caps, and the yard machine is missing the air filter and air filter cover also. So they do not look like they've been taken care of, but we will see if we can get them running. The yard machine, already checked that out, got it cleaned up, got it running well. I'll put a link to that video in the top right corner. But now let's turn our attention to the Craftsman. Let me check the oil, see if there's any in it. It's dirty, but there is oil. Now the air filter, and it looks nasty, and it is. Down in the tank, there is some fuel, or there's liquid anyway. Might be rainwater if they had it sitting outside without the cap on. So let me try to prime it and we'll see if it fires up. If it does, that's great. If it doesn't, we'll spray some starting fluid in the carb, see if it runs for a second. All right, no luck. Try the carb spray or starting fluid. Let's get the carburetor off and clean that out. Also take the fuel tank off and clean that out. On the carb, 4 screws to get this cover off. The 2 on the outside, the larger ones are 5/16, and these 2 on the left and down below are 9/32. And we saw the smoke coming out of the carburetor while it was running, so this thing's definitely burning oil. Question is, why? You can see how oily this is, so it's probably been burning oil for a while. Let's get this fuel line off. This just fell out. It doesn't want to go back in. So we'll look at that in a minute. And wasn't too much in there. That looks like old gas, that darker color. So now the carb, got to get it off the linkage. So I'll spin it to the left so I can work it off that little S bend in the linkage. And now back here, the O-ring and the snap ring or retaining ring. Make sure you keep track of those. They may stay on that pipe, they may stay on the carburetor, or they may fall off, so don't lose track of those. Now up top, to get the fuel tank off, this cover has to come off with the starter assembly. These screws are 5/16. And now the tank just clips on. There are no screws holding that in. And looking down in the tank, you can see why it was necessary to take it off and clean it. They had been running this mower without a gas cap. This is Purple Power degreaser. This is brake clean to clean off the outside of the carb. And now on the carb, this little piece that popped off the side, it looks like it should just snap back in. Yeah, that just snaps back in. So now let's get the bowl off the bottom and get to the main jet and clean that out. These screws are 9/32. Should be some gas in this bottom part, and there is. Let's see if there's any dirt in the bottom. And no, very little. This pin, which is slid over, that's what holds the float in. We need to pop that up on both sides. And be careful because the needle valve is on the underside right there. Now this piece with the main jet, that will slide out. Right through that hole is where the main jet is. See the light through that hole right there? You can see a little bit. I believe there should be more light than that. I think it's partially clogged. So that is completely cleared out, and that does look bigger to me. Now this piece, we can take it apart a little bit more and get to the emulsion tube. So this piece will pry up. And that center piece right there, that is the emulsion tube. See the holes in the side? You can run a piece of wire through those. They go all the way through just to make sure those are clear. I'm gonna hit all this with some carb spray. And now back on the carb, down through this hole, that's where the needle valve sets, and there's a hole down at the bottom. You wanna make sure that's clear. So a little bit of carb spray in there. And also through the inlet where the fuel line connects. And the butterfly valve, and we can get this put back together. This piece slides back on. and the O-ring goes towards the outside, and then that'll snap in. And now the float, pin, and the needle valve, and the needle valve hangs underneath, goes right into that slot, and then the needle valve goes into that hole right there. And then you snap the pin back in on both sides. And now the bottom piece, the correct orientation is to put this rectangle directly over where the main jet is, just like that. If you had it the other way, it's not going to go on, so don't force it. It needs to be rectangle right over the main jet. Now let's get the mower deck cleaned up. And now purple power degreaser again. I got the dipstick removed. I'm going to dump the oil out and see how much is in there. Maybe the oil's overfilled. Maybe that's the reason it's smoking so bad. There's no drain plug on this engine, so you just got to pour it out this way. Had about 15 ounces of oil, which is actually a little less than what it should have, so it is not overfilled. That's not the reason for the smoking. It is the next morning. Everything's dried out. The mower's dry. The parts that I washed are dry. It's raining outside, so that's noise you hear in the background. That's rain on my metal roof. I want to adjust the gap between the ignition coil and the flywheel because right now there is barely any gap at all. I can't get this card in between the two. This is about the thickness of a business card. So I want to loosen these two screws. They are 1/4 inch. And then I will pull the ignition coil back and I'll put that card in between the two. And over here on the right, that's where the magnets are on the flywheel. See how that screw sticks to it? Pull the ignition coil back, put the card in between, and see how the coil is not drawn in right now, but watch what happens when I turn the flywheel. When the magnets get in front of the ignition coil, we'll see it being drawn in. I'm gonna hold the card so it won't spin. Watch this side, that'll snap in first. See it pulled in? Now watch that side. There it went. Now I can tighten down those screws. Now starting reassembly, don't forget the O-ring. It goes on the carburetor in that opening where the butterfly valve is. So the O-ring goes in first, and then the retaining ring or the snap ring. Don't forget to put that back in. If you do, you will have a vacuum leak and your engine will not run right. And now this piece with the priming bulb, check that out. This has gotten so hot that the plastic melted. Maybe there was a backfire and the carburetor caught on fire for a second. Silicone spray on the pull cord, the starter assembly, and the kill switch, and the cable. Now we got to put some fresh oil in it. Put that oil in, this has got to come back off because this is a terrible design. That dipstick and the hole, it's kind of recessed. I'm adding 16 ounces of straight 30 weight oil. Last thing to do before we try and start it is clean the spark plug and check the gap. It does look like the gap is too narrow. It should be 0.03 inches, and it is a little too tight. Let me bend it up. That's good right there, 0.03 inches. Rain finally stopped, so we can try to start this thing. Hopefully it will start without having to prime it with starting fluid. So the Craftsman's still burning oil. That's okay. I'll use this as a trash mower up in the woods to cut underbrush. The yard machine, put a link to that video top left corner right now. That's running like brand new, and it's only 3 years old. So that is like a brand new mower. $283 right now at Home Depot.